Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Kidney Coach YouTube channel. I am naturopath Fiona Chin, co-founder of Kidney Coach Kaigenesis, which is our supplement range for people diagnosed with chronic kidney disease. And I'm joined again today by the wonderful, beautiful, stunning, amazing Stephanie Modavis. Stephanie has come on board as one of our kidney coaches. She is amazing in her spectrum of things that she can address and work with. Stephanie has a very unique story, and if you haven't heard her story before, I implore you to go back and listen to previous podcasts. Stephanie herself is a survivor's the wrong word. She's come through the other end empowered through her journey with chronic kidney disease, having gone through 2 transplants, dialysis, near death, all those sort of things, and now she's really shining her light in the arena of the public health system and people with chronic disease, including kidney disease, and really digging and finding the gems that can come out of chronic disease. She does a lot of work with yoga, mindset coaching, and helping people that are probably in the pits of despair, which often happens when we're told we have to go on dialysis or have a kidney transplant. And Stephanie is there to help people navigate the modern Western model and how to advocate and empower yourself so you can come out the other end not feeling like someone dictated your journey through that. Stephanie, is that the best way I can put that? I feel like when I sum you up there, you're a shepherd or a steward for people going through something that can be very disempowering. Maybe that's the best way I can put it.
Yeah, I think you did a fantastic job. Thank you so much, Fiona. I'm so honored to have you explain me like that. And I'm happy to be here. Everybody, look into products of Kidney Coach. I swear by them. I think you guys are fantastic. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here. And you're right. I've been through 2 transplants myself, and I've been involved in the Western medical model for close to 20 years. And I have to say, it was a wild ride, and it was not fun all the time. Now, if you need a kidney and you're eligible to receive one and you wait 5 years, there is a tremendous high when you're able to receive that organ and you're told that you're going to go get your life back and go get them, kid, and tackle the world. And afterward, you wonder what the heck just happened to me, and you have no way to guide you through the other end of the process. So from my lengthy experience, I think we can do a better job prepping people for the process earlier on, which I think is one thing that you guys do very well. And then also post-care and really understanding this internal process, this internal landscape of what the heck just happened to me. And yes, I'm happy to have my life back, or I'm happy to be feeling better, or I'm not happy, I'm not yet feeling better. And to have these other things to focus on to try to find some balance in other areas of our life. So since it's right before the holidays, I know that stress can be a really big topic for many people. And when you have any sort of chronic illness, whether you're a human in general, we experience that stress. But if you've got an illness on top of it, sometimes the stress just feels compounded. And I can attest to this myself. I felt like I was putting people out, or I couldn't participate the way I wanted to participate. I had to sit out with, certain meals because of what I could and couldn't eat. It just felt like sometimes I wanted to isolate myself more than be involved. And as a patient, I think that's a trap that we can all fall into. And I'm definitely guilty of that. Is I'd rather just isolate myself than put anyone out. And that definitely comes from my people-pleasing days. I've had to really address the heart and the root cause of that people-pleasing and understand that no matter how I am, no matter what my health is, I still deserve love and company. So today, I just wanted to share with you some things that I call the love vitamins. And this comes from a coaching course I did with Dr. Jonathan Gray. He's a Mars-Venus kind of relationship coach, and he talks about love vitamins. And I thought it was such a profound injection of something we could talk about in this community as well, because it's such a spectrum. And even though we may be really low in one vitamin, we can really focus on other vitamins to try to help us feel better and find a little bit of balance. Because when I first went through this, I was quite imbalanced. I was deficient in a lot of my vitamins, so to speak. So,
it's funny. I work with a psychologist because I think we should always be delving and working and all those sort of things. And I said to her, my commitment to myself for 2025 is to be a recovering people pleaser. I feel like I've got enough hindsight around it, and I'm like, I'm committed to being, 12-step I'm like 12-step program me through being a people pleaser. That's my whole thing for 2025. So I love this. This sounds like it's nice and in alignment with that stuff.
Fiona, I have to be honest with you, that is one of my core issues. So I can totally relate, and really diving deep into that balance of, well, I don't want to be selfish.
No,
what is it like?
Who we are, right? We love to give, but how do we do it so we don't blow ourselves up?
In a balanced way, right? So I want everybody, as I present this, as these vitamins that we're going to talk about, I think there's 10 of them. Remember, this is a spectrum. So you're not going to be, high on all of them. So just keep in mind, but it's something to think about in terms of a totality of a good, healthy life experience. Is we want to try to have a nice balance of all of these, I think. So why is love so important? These are our love vitamins. So, I couldn't think of anything else to say, but because love is awesome and it's very healing. I mean, I think we need to get real here, is that when you have that state of really being in love, not just with a partner, but with your life or with your experiences, I don't want to get cliche here, but literally your vibration is higher. It tends to be that your immune system can function better. Sometimes people even get less sick, colds or whatever, if they just are kind of filled with this spirit of love, which is really hard sometimes when we're sick to see the other areas that are actually really good in our life. So yeah, for me, I think love is pretty cool. So complicated, but it's very cool. So we're gonna start with the first one, with the big man. So I have vitamin G1, which is love and support from the God of your own understanding. Okay. So again, sometimes we can't control everything that's going on with us, especially if you're dealing with kidney disease. It just sometimes can feel like a curse. It doesn't often feel like a blessing. And it can be, very lonely at times. And, one thing that really helped me along my journey, especially when I realized I couldn't control it, which was a very hard realization in life, that, oh, I'm not in total control.
Darn that. Where was that written into the contract when I was born? I missed that fine print.
Exactly. But so many times along my journey with kidney disease, man, when I was suffering, when I was resisting the process, when I was feeling depressed or anxious or just out of my head, I had to just keep surrendering to the unknown over and over and over and over again, because apparently I'm part of the slow crew, because I couldn't get it. I just had to surrender, like, again and 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 again. But then one day I think I actually got it. And I was like, all right, I'm like the passenger seat here and I'm doing all that I can, but there's something going on here that's bigger than me. And the more I try to grasp onto it and drive the bus, the more I'm getting myself in some sort of an accident.
It's like, you don't have a license for this, bus woman, like, just sit down.
Exactly. So vitamin G1, a transcendent source of something that's bigger than you, because we obviously as humans are quite fallible. We're amazing, but we're quite fallible. So then we've got vitamin P1, and this is such a cute picture. Love and support from our parents or parental role model, or some sort of authority parental figure. So right off the bat, with the last one, I hope I didn't trigger anybody with vitamin G1, but vitamin P1 can be a little bit of a challenge too, because we're like, oh, I don't have the most supportive relationship with my parents, or my parents stress me out, or maybe I don't know my biological parents, or maybe they're deceased, or the innumerous things that we can have from our parents that also cause frustration. And if you're out there and you have a wonderful, healthy parental support system, you are blessed. I think you're in the minority. You're very blessed. But for a lot of us, this can be difficult, and including for myself. I think I have disclosed before that, my parents definitely did not have it figured out. I am the product of a divorce when I was young, which is confusing. A lot of times children think it's all their fault. I did have some lingering parental trauma, and forgiving my parents around the fact that, maybe they did the best that they could with what they had was another issue that I really had to contend with for many years, well into my adult life, honestly. But what has been really cool about the parental role and parental figures in my life is that even when I was most struggling with one or both of my parents, I always seemed to somehow meet other people in my life randomly out of the blue that filled a void within that parental role, whether it was like I had pseudo or proxy mothers and fathers in my life. So I think that is something that's been such a huge, huge blessing for me as somebody who had a parentified child role, who still feels like I'm parenting my parents, is that, again, there is somebody who's in that role for me, who can provide me with what I feel that I actually needed, not by contrast, which I learned from that, but from that true loving and supportive role. So what do you feel about that, Fiona?
Look, I'm one of the minority. My dad passed away 2 years ago, but my parents, not divorced, stayed together and very close to both of them. So, because I have a chronic health disease as well, she's an anxious mother. And I definitely, if I'm having a crisis, I can't go to her because she goes into crisis. I'm like, not helpful. But I've got an amazing sister who's very good in, if I have a crush at she was just with me in Dubai. I had some crazy treatment over there and had some pretty severe side effects, and she's great in crisis. My mother, wonderful. But as far as just good parental roles that I know love me unconditionally and all that sort of stuff, I'm blessed. So that one's an easy one for me, annoyingly so for people. But yeah, no, that one I'm blessed with for sure.
Good. I'm so glad to hear that. And to anyone out there who struggles with this, especially if you have a kidney disease or you have something that you're trying to fight as far as an illness, this can be a huge source of stress. If you feel like you don't have that support, either through your illness or maybe your whole life. And sometimes when you're really down and out with illness, a lot of these deeper issues start to bubble up. And you start to really realize, like, what has my life been like? What is the support system that I've had? So for anyone out there, who does have complications or struggle with their parental roles, I feel you. I see you. I'm here, with you. And again, instead of putting all the attention on what we didn't have, really as adults trying to find out how, divinely other people may have been placed in our lives at certain times that do fulfill one or both of that, fatherly and loving motherly figure. So I definitely, have a bunch of those that I think about quite often that I was blessed to have. So yes. Next one is vitamin F. Love and support from family, friends, and simply just having fun. This is a good one.
An important one.
This is a really important one. And again, I just want to bring it back to the issue of living with a chronic illness, is that sometimes you feel like you want to isolate, and sometimes you get really consumed, especially if you're in pain, especially if you're going through or undergoing treatments, or you just have fear and anxiety about your future. Usually the tendency is to isolate. So I just really encourage anyone out there that, there are friends who want to be with you. You can still have fun, even though you have an illness or you're struggling with something. You just have to give yourself permission to let yourself go there and to move out of that mindset of the fear and uncertainty and start to understand that there's so much of a broader picture, and to give yourself permission to not be all consumed with your struggles. I know it's easier said than done. Been there. I've totally been there. But really, honestly, if you can just pull back a little bit and permit yourself to have some of that fun and even family or friend time, a lot of times it can help you in a lot of different areas, mentally, even with pain. You can somehow kind of shift some things out of your body and you can start to feel a little bit better.
Yeah, this is such an interesting one because I've got, I don't like the word disability, but my walking is compromised. So going out is hard. and I'm not in a wheelchair. So people are like, the world is great for accessibility. I'm like, it's really not when you've got a whole body along on crutches and a great big leg brace. I'm like, it's not designed for people like us. So catching up with friends is hard. I'm like, do I want to drive across crazy Melbourne traffic and, on a 35-degree day, and I'm not sure what the parking's like, and I have no idea how far I have to walk. So I am one of these people that will isolate because I go too hard basket. But I think if you have really good friends, and if you don't do the feeling guilty of making friends accommodate around you, generally good friends don't mind, changing things or making sure that they choose places that are going to work for you. And I think it's really important. This year was tough for me. Because I'd isolated for so long, that I had to have conversations with friends of, I can come, but it needs to look like this for me to be able to come and relax and do those sort of things. And sometimes I'm the person that will cancel last minute. It's a hot day. I'm like, I just can't do that to myself. And I think the good friends understand that. And it's been one of those things, I don't know if anyone's come across Mel Robbins' Let Them, but it's been a big thing for me, that people pleasing, and then just going, the right friends stick around for that, and the ones that don't understand won't. And that's okay. So yeah, it's a tough one. This one is the one that I would find one of the hardest things to do, is the balance between, putting yourself out there and doing stuff even when I'm tired and in pain, to get my vitamin F, versus sometimes the best thing I can do is actually hide. So it's a really fine balance. But my friends are my fuel for my life. I love them. So it's definitely that's a tough one.
Yeah, you hit on a couple really good points there, Fiona. Is there has to be a level of discernment, right? Is that when you do have a physical issue, sometimes the best thing is to just isolate and stay at home and rest. Netflix, and like that is what you need. But again, the honesty with the self, that's really what's pivotal for me. The honesty with myself is like, okay, am I now resisting going out because I'm more comfortable here? So I don't have to put anybody out. So that's so important, to have the discernment of when you're purposefully isolating and it's not really just a need. And I have to honestly just hit on this issue with also dealing with a chronic illness that you brought up, is that, again, usually when you go through something really life-changing, especially around physical health, a lot of things bubble up to the forefront. And even your friend group is one of those. Again, it's like everything's on the table when you're going through a chronic illness. It's a major life change. It's a major life change. So sometimes you come to understand that those that you thought you could rely on, you actually can't. And that maybe those who you thought you were close with, you come to realize that they don't know how to deal with illness, and they really pull back and pull away, and things get weird.
Yeah, 100%.
I've had along my journey, I had some of the most random people actually become much closer to me, just because simply they had the capacity to handle the uncertainty around me having an illness. They weren't afraid. They got right in. They weren't afraid. And sometimes it's like the least expected person, and the one who you think is going to be right there for you is just not.
Couldn't agree with you more. It's such an interesting thing, because I think chronic illness for people is such a trigger. And so people will either dig in and support you, or you will trigger and scare the living bejesus out of people, meaning, one of the things that I had to learn, and you've touched on this as well, is that it will never be about you. It'll be about their own inability to support you in a way that you need to. And so people just pull away, not because of you and anything you've done wrong, because of their inability to know how to handle chronic disease. And it's really important to be able to let them go and wish them well, and not take that on as a fault in yourself, which is something I've had to work on really hard this year. I mean, I've been blessed. Most of my friends are great, but you're right. One or two that you think would stick around, run for the hills, and then other people just are so good at digging in and turning up for you.
Yeah, totally. And, this is bringing up a lot, the family, friends and fun issues, bringing up a lot here for us. I think that the other thing I came to understand really clearly is that during illness bouts where I was feeling exceptionally vulnerable or in pain or just uncertain about some things that were going on within my body, some of those friends who didn't quite know how to handle being in the company of somebody who had chronic illness, it's like they would say certain things that seemed really bristly, and I would get offended very easily. And I had to come to also realize that I'm actually in a vulnerable state, which maybe I'm taking something that they're saying too harshly. So it's this real discovery thing as so far as like your friends and your ability to see who's going to kind of be with you on your journey when you really need it and who's not. And if they're not, it's actually good on both sides that they did exit your life. So it's not something like, I remember after my first transplant, I was newly transplanted, still very vulnerable. I had a very long journey before transplant, many years on dialysis. My soul was tired. My spirit was still vulnerable, even though my body was recovering. And I remember one of the first times I had gone out with friends after my transplant, I still had very little hair at the time because I was getting a lot of chemo drugs prior. I was a mess. And one of the girls just very flippantly, just, she wasn't thinking, and she's like, oh, I had such a bad haircut. I spend this many $100s on my haircut. And oh my gosh, you did such a bad job. Just complaining over something as I'm sitting there bald. Right. And I'm like, I took it very personally. And I just was like, wow, this person is so shallow. Like it took me a long time to realize she's not in my shoes, nor can I expect her to to understand the pain I went through. I don't want her to feel that pain. So I really had to mature along my journey too, and learning how to give people the benefit of the doubt, especially if they've never experienced some sort of physical or traumatic illness experience. They're clueless. So I had to learn to get a little stronger and not expect people to always be putting me first because I had an illness.
It's such a great point. And you're right. People aren't being malicious. People are just doing life, right? And they're not thinking. I found, the biggest thing I found is most people, we always think people are thinking about us, judging us and all that sort of stuff. People are so self-consumed with their own stuff that, it's never really about you. So I'm like, yeah, wow. It's never about us. It's always about them. And, when I really got, okay, that just takes me and everybody off the hook.
Yeah, absolutely. And, fortunately, sometimes people are directing something at you, and hopefully it's just over in your face and you can deal with it. But it's those times when there's like this underlying energy and you don't know if you should take it personally. But what I really realized through my illness journey was that you're right, Fiona. People don't tend to care about you as much as you may think. And that's okay. That's okay. Yeah. So, again, the good ones will stick around and you will know it. You will know it.
100%.
Okay. So now we're going on to vitamin P2. This is love and support from peers and others with similar interests. This actually is one of my highest filled vitamins right now, because I'm really passionate about the work that I'm doing. So I really tend to find a lot of fulfillment from being with others who are working on similar projects as I am. So again, you can't expect, I think, back in the day when we were all a little more maybe unconscious in relationships or codependent, we expect one person to fill all of these vitamins for us, especially if you're in an intimate relationship, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's a great way to kill a relationship, FYI, people.
Yeah, exactly. So having these people who, first off, do you have any hobbies? It doesn't matter what it is. Could be movies, could be crocheting, could be fishing, chess, anything. There's so many interesting things. Whatever it is that you love to do, there's someone out there, no matter how nerdy it may be, who loves the same thing that you love to do. And I think when you spend time with them, it's like, there's no really explaining about too much in depth because you're focused on that one thing that you're both really excited about. And it kind of can give your brain a break from maybe thinking about the illness, especially if it's something that's been on your mind a ton.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that one. Cool. I don't know whether you've got a T for tribe, but those people often can sometimes fit into that tribe energy too, can't they?
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, I'd say it's very, very, very similar. So next one is vitamin S, love and support.
Nice and easy, this one.
Wow, I'm still working on this one.
You and me both.
Yeah, I'm still working on this one. And again, I think that from my illness experience, when I look back, I mean, I still have to deal with my illness, but it's very different as to when I was dialysis and waiting for a transplant. That waiting is just, that's high level stuff you have to really learn to integrate, is just like waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting. And like, am I going to live or die? Well, we have yet to see. I mean, really talking about doing some high level Zen practice, like wait for an organ. It was like the highest level Zen practice you can have. But love for support, love and support for ourselves. I think what I realized, what I'm realizing still, is that there are things that are obviously in support of self-love that people talk about, right? It tends to be more externalized and extrinsic, like take a salt bath, go to yoga, go for a walk, do this, do that. But I've, over the past couple of years, have really been delving into, well, do I even really know myself? So like before I can really self-care, I started to really understand that who really am I besides the, the manual I was born with when I came here, between my family system and what the culture was at the time and the conditioning that I've got. And like, I really went through this awakening after my transplant, was like, am I all these things I thought I was? Or actually like this new self wanted to be birthed out of me, especially after my first transplant. When I got that transplant, again, I was told, you're going to get your life back. And physically I did, but I realized psychologically, emotionally, and spiritually, that was when a whole nother journey had to happen that nobody ever warned me about, which is like, well, now you're going to go on another 10-year journey of discovering who you really are now on the inside. And I was like, whoa, nobody told me about this part.
Yeah. Welcome to Chronic Disease 101. That's the handbook that goes with it to really heal, isn't it? It's the same journey for me. And I've got this thing that I really am sitting into at the moment, is that authenticity, which is sort of what you were saying there about who am I really and what is my real self and how I express that authenticity is the highest form of self-love. That's my saying for 2025. And the reflection of, I was writing down the things that I'd learned in 2024. And that was one of the big ones, that true authenticity, and what I mean by that is the ability to be 100% yourself with no, excuse my French, fucks given. When you can really not care about other people's opinions, not in a selfless way, and you would go and do whatever you want, but when the opinion of someone would stop you doing something that feels so true and aligned to you, when you can live out of true authenticity, what happens is two things. One, you polarize people. So you're no longer vanilla, right? And this is the thing. People like to be liked. This is this people-pleasing thing. So people like to go through life being liked. The problem with being liked is people like you, but you don't get that people love you. And then people stick around that may want stuff from you that tend to suck energy. I find that when you're truly authentic, you'll have a whole pile of people drop away. And if you're a people pleaser like me, that can be really hard. But what you find is the people that stick around love you and love you for you and will support you energetically to be the greatest, highest version of yourself. And the people that fall away were never going to do that for you anyway. And so what you are able to do then is you get a greater sense of self-love for the essence of who you are. And like him or hate him, I do think what you've just gone through in America in your voting and what's happened with presidency is a prime example of this. And again, I've got no opinion on that, but Trump, love him or hate him, is actually pretty authentic in the way that he just turns up as himself, and then you have maybe the other side. And again, this is from an outsider looking in, so I'm not pretending to have big political views about this, but seemed more vanilla, trying to apply to everybody. But I had no idea who they were. I had no idea of what their policies were or what they're going to do or the essence of them. And I think as a collective culture, we want authenticity. And I suspect on an energetic level, that's why you've got Trump as a president. And because you know what you're getting. It's like the days of Margaret Thatcher, love her or hate her. You know, she's someone that really stuck out to me, that she was a UK Prime Minister, for people that don't know, back in the 80s. But love her or hate her, you knew exactly what she stood for. So you knew what you were going to get in there, which means that when you put your vote behind her, you knew exactly that. And so you were very clearly either, no, I don't want to vote for this person, or yes, I do. But she was such a powerhouse through the UK for so long. And I think, you know, that's that authenticity stuff. So I think that when we have the ability to do that, and you see this with Trump, right? It's so polarizing. You love him or hate him. There's not really anything in between. And I think people are so afraid to step into that energy for themselves because people don't want to be hated. But it just means those people aren't for you. And wouldn't you rather live a life surrounded by people who are going to champion you and love you for the exact essence of who you are, and not deal with other people that aren't that? I don't know. It's a choice I feel like at some stage all of us have to make, to step in. You can have a huge circle of people that like you, and you can go through life very vanilla, or you can be surrounded by less people, because I think the more authentic you are, the smaller your circle gets. But those people will love you, and you'll live a very fulfilling, authentic life. At least that's my theory. I'm okay to be wrong about that, but that's definitely, I've decided to go for the authentic side.
That was so well said. Bravo. I thought it was, you did, I think that was just amazing. And, you know, you're accurate. You know, I don't want to get into politics either, but I mean, the human condition, especially for people who tend to be people pleasers, is to wear masks. We wear masks. We don't know it. We start to lose connection with our own soul because we are just spouting out a message that we think other people want to hear. And that was so evident in some of the politics that was going on. It was, you know, like, I can't read through the word salad. Like, who are you? I have no, like, what are you saying? Like, I don't get it.
You're the second person to use word salad on me today. I love it. It's a new thing. This is one of my new favorite slogans. Keep going. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love it. It's right.
Yeah. That is the difficult thing, though, is that it's nice and easy to just rile up a crowd and have an event where everybody's excited. But then are these things just temporary moments of relief? Is anything sustainable? Is anything contributing to true, real transformation? And the reality is that change is messy. And if we just want to, you know, propagate a message of empowerment and this and that, that's great. But in reality, you know, if you don't ground it and do the work and go through the messiness of the change, nothing is ever changing. You're on the same loop. This is where we get in, the same cycle, repeating history over and over and over again. And with Trump, as you were saying, you're right, the guy's not perfect. But let's be honest, whoever in office was perfect, of any of us, I don't know anybody yet that is perfect. So it's one of those things where I think the rawness of his messiness, it triggers other people's messiness.
100%. His rawness is honest. He's, you know, again, I'm not saying he's an honest person and people don't misconstrue it, but the way he presents himself is honest. I don't feel like that man masks. I don't think he's got the ability to do that.
No, and that's why I think he has a lot of labels thrown on him, right? But I think the point and the essence of what we both are saying is that authenticity isn't polished.
Yes, very well said.
It's authenticity is not, you know, showing up and inspiring everybody and looking fantastic and walking off the stage. It's not a performance. And I think you're absolutely right, is that humanity is sick and tired of holding in our authenticity. And we're discovering the toxicity that it contributes to the environment when we are covertly ourselves and not just overtly ourselves. So, you know, one thing I've learned this year is that the insidious nature of covert abuse over just downright telling somebody how you feel about them or just overtly being upfront. I just made a video, actually, a little off topic, but I was talking about female bullying being insidious because it tends to use higher level psychological and emotional manipulation. It's covert jabs, right? And I think that's what people are tired of. It's like a lot of us are waking up to the fact that we have been involved in unhealthy, toxic, or even abusive relationships. That was the theme of the whole last year. Narcissists,
Yes.
empaths, abuse. That's all anybody was talking about. And in order to the reality is that both of these sides have work to do. It's an out of balance energy of either covert or overt energy. It's not really healthy on either end. So I absolutely think you're right. And the most painful thing that I went through myself too was, again, really challenging my my spiritual background, which loves unification and trying to get everybody to be on the same team and love each other, is that I absolutely feel that this year we were called to step up and pick a side. Are you going to be authentic or not? Which meant that for me, I felt like I was going against my nature of unification, but the unification wasn't right. It wasn't two ends I wanted to see come together. Something felt weird. So I had to really say, I'm choosing authenticity. Of course, I'm choosing love, but I have to rip my masks off. And again, be at risk for pissing off some people, which is not something I like to do. But I don't have another choice, because especially for me, knowing my proclivity towards people pleasing and how I've dealt with things in my life and what the repercussions of that, the physical damage from living a life of trying to please and not allowing myself to be my full self, it was very clear to me that at this time, Stephanie, I said to myself, if you want to survive and thrive, you got to be willing to just show up as yourself so you can determine who really your tribe is and who is not your tribe, and just keep walking in that faith that, you are enough as you are and you are worthy, and just really keep walking in your authenticity. And that was hard because I let go of some big work projects. I let go of some big people. I had to let some things die within me that I was a little bit attached to.
You've just said it perfectly. You and I have obviously gone through the same journey this year, and I think it is a people pleasing thing. And I do think people pleasers have been asked to drop the masks that we wear. And your point about, women and bullying, but I'd also go back to say that when you people please, you don't live authentically, but you give yourself over to other people and to keep the peace and all that stuff, it's death by 1,000 paper cuts. And I do think, for me, on my reflection, it's why I've got a chronic disease. It's the continual suppression that I had of myself in people pleasing. And Gabor Mate speaks to this. And I'm not saying it's just a female thing, but women are bigger people pleasers generally than men. And it's one of the things of why I think we need to embrace the masculine and there's so much power in men. I don't think that energy needs to be suppressed. But for me, it was that people pleasing, mask wearing, death by 1,000 paper cuts. And I can now look back on a period of my life and go, I have no doubt that is why I created a chronic disease, because I hadn't been authentically myself, which is what I'm calling forth in 2025. So you just summed up exactly what I've been. So
I'm so happy. I'm so happy to hear that. And I'm going to be on the same journey because I feel the same way. But I can look back and start to see when I started to fragment. And, I vividly recall a memory of my childhood. And this isn't, a woe is me moment. It's just a real moment. My mother had a lot of negativity. And I remember being, I'd say 10 years old. And I stood there and I, was innocent and, just lighthearted, very loving young lady. And I sat there and I said, I'm going to make it my job to make you happy.
Wow. You remember that. Mine would have been conscious. Yours is, wow. That's
so it was like I was saying, forget myself.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to make it my job to get you out of your negativity. And it, in a way, I can see how that contrast in my life has cultivated me in many ways. And really, it's really made me the person that I am today, by having that. But I also do feel that that was some of the beginning stages of me trying to always be the opposite of that, to counteract that negativity. And I just saw something today earlier from Gabor Mate, talking about women and autoimmune diseases. And he said that, and this really hit me in my gut. He was talking about how so many women suppress their anger.
Yes. Yeah.
And I, like, for me, it's funny, because I realize is like I had this loyalty towards spiritual practice, which tells you it's peace, it's Zen. Like, there's not much talk about how to release anger in a healthy way. And I think that was something that, I just swallowed it. I swallowed so much of my frustration and tried to show up as the better person. But I also see as an adult that it's not healthy for me now to try to polarize and to reclaim all of that, those words that needed to come out. I'm not going to do that either. But what I have gotten much better at is authentic communication. And in the moment, I've trained myself, and I've had relationships, a couple of people to really work through this with, to be able to feel safe enough with myself in any situation that if something arises with an individual that makes me feel uncomfortable or even frustrated or angry, I don't sit with it. I can immediately say, why did you say that? Or is that what you mean? That really upsets me. Is that how you meant it? Like, I have the courage right in the moment to just go into the uncomfortableness, and without a big reaction, but not ignoring it and say, well, let me think about this and try to get back with her after I digest it and mull it over in my head 100 times and swallow all of this frustration. I finally have the ability to confront it in the moment and with love. And however that person reacts is on them.
Well, that's amazing that you've got there with that emotional regulation. And for people listening that don't know, both Stephanie and I have autoimmune diseases, which is exactly what Gabor Mate says happens to women that become people pleasers and do exactly that. I'm grown up. And then how we're obviously coming through this awakening right now. So very fascinating. You know, I think we've just given a lot of credit to Gabor Mate's work, because you and I are perfect products of exactly what he talks about. But at least we're working it out now, finally, in our 40s. And Stephanie and I are the same age too. So we've awakened at the same time.
And I don't think we're the only ones. And I think there's a collective thing happening regarding our health and wellness. And then the other thing that I'm learning about, this vitamin S is that if you don't stand up for your authenticity and you don't stand up for what's right or yourself, somebody else will be more than happy to claim that energy and be hyper, however, in an unhealthy mode in another way. So I've realized that, okay, I think, I know that everything in the world is energy, has this focus on energy. I love this. But I also understand now more environmentally and with human beings that everything craves an element of homeostasis. So if you're hypocompensatory in your reactions, someone is going to be more than happy to take that and be hyper, whatever it may be, in their reactions in another way, which I think that this is why we see, a lot of, some of the empowerment movements go south and get a little too demanding or, boss babe bitch, too hard, to usurping the masculine energy, because I think us have to rise up in our energy so we can help to lower down that dominant force. The last thing I'll say is there's a funny meme that every now and again I bring out over the last couple of years, and it's just like some protesters in the street, and they have a sign and it says, it's serious when the introverts come out. And you see them like all holding signs. And that's exactly how I feel, is that we have gifts, and there are a lot of people who, for whatever reason, have been suppressing or staying small or dealing with things from our past. And now's the time for us to rise up in our healthy energy. And for those who've been claiming the stage, maybe falsely, I hope can lower down in their energy a little bit. So Yeah, let's see.
Yeah.
All right. So on to another easy one. All right. Vitamin R. I don't think there is a real vitamin R, is there? But we've got love and support from relationships, intimate partners, and romance. This is a, I can't speak too much on this one. This is a little deficient for me right now because I'm so much working on my vitamin S, you know?
Yes, same. And I think when you get your vitamin S right, you attract a very healthy vitamin R. I do believe that everyone that says that, you know, I was like, boring, but no, I'm like, no, they're right. When you get your vitamin S right, vitamin R will turn up in a much healthier way. They're a little bit dependent on each other. So you don't die 1,000 paper cuts by not being your authentic self. I already did that one. Like, that doesn't work. So let's get S right so we can get R right.
You know, and that's another, I totally agree with you on that one. And, you know, again, before I had my wake up moment, I was just living my life as best as I possibly could. And I thought that I was, you know, awake to things, but I realized I was just in this flow of autopilot. And even though I was really trying, I really wasn't aware. I really wasn't self-aware. I really wasn't what I would call awake. I was just kind of on autopilot. And I did the best I could in my relationships. And I was married once before to a very nice man. And but it was like this just dynamic playing out where you start falling in love with each other through like the attraction and the chemistry and from like the lower nature self. And then all of a sudden I was finding us going down this path that you hear, which is like a nightmare, is like, yeah, it all starts out great. And then it's just a downward spiral from after you get married. And I could see us on there. I could see us going down that path. And I remember at one point, even though he was a very wonderful man, crying. I found myself crying. And I said, is this all there is? Something is missing. Like, I don't know what it is, but it's like, most people would look in on my relationship and say like, well, you have it made. I actually had a girlfriend of mine who said, if you guys can't make it, there's no hope for me. And
oh my goodness, I had that said to me too. So yeah, I get it.
And I said to her, I said, I'm so sorry that I had no idea people were putting that kind of weight on my relationship. And I said, I'm so sorry. I was doing the best I could with what I had. And I realized that I was faking a lot. And I was making the relationship like, you know, we didn't have kids and it was always fun. And we showed up as the playful couple with no kids. And I realized that I was contributing to a story and it wasn't really surrounding my true self, but I didn't know my true self. So like you said, I'm hoping that all of this time that I've spent really getting to know myself and learning that I can now attract somebody maybe from a higher perspective, you know, not just the chemistry and the romance and all of that stuff, but really a spiritual connection is really what I desire. And, you know, yes, I desire fun as well too, but I don't want that to be the source and the foundation of the relationship. So yes, I understand what you're talking about. So, and even when you know, have any kind of illness or kidney disease, I remember when I was going in the thick of my illness, my relationship was, you know, there were really good times where I needed that comfort. But then there were also times where when I was really in the throes of my illness, literally everything was on the table. Yeah. Because I didn't know if I was going to live or die. So it was like everything I was doing was kind of like up for a little bit of a negotiation. You know, I just had to kind of wait to see what was going to happen. And fortunately, I had a lot of support through my first transplant from my husband at the time, an immense amount of support that I was so grateful for. Looking back, again, I see that there was a lot of codependence in the connection. And going through my transplant the second time, I chose consciously to go through the whole process pretty much by myself. And again, if anyone is on a transplant list, like that's the first rule of thumb is like, how many caregivers do you have to take care of you that are going to be there at your beck and call? And I lied. I said, of course, you know, like I have this many people and I'm not going to be alone. And I did have one or two people checking on me or really helping me if I were in need. But it's amazing what you can do if you're, of course, I had the experience of going through it the first time. I wouldn't recommend anyone do it alone the first time. But that really showed me what I was made of, was to go through my life and this illness, primarily by myself. And I'm still doing it. And let me tell you something, I've learned how strong I am. I've learned my own resilience. I've learned how to not be codependent. I've learned to see what I'm truly made of. And now that I understand that very clearly, I think my self-worth has risen.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully, at this time, I'll be able to get a little more vitamin R in my life sometime soon. But I do think that a lot of my journey also revolved around, I think my core wound is self-worth. Really, really understanding that, I am worthy of a wonderful life and love, and my authentic voice needs to be heard. And it sounds so simple to be in my mid to late 40s and to come to this conclusion. Again, I think I'm in the slow group maybe, but I feel so grateful to at least have woken up in this lifetime to see this.
Yeah, no, I can relate to all of that.
Yeah. Now we got vitamin D.
Oh, my vitamin D is sitting on the couch over there.
Oh, good. Yeah, we need the sun. Obviously that's, I don't know what happened over the last couple of years with trying to keep people out of the sun and making people afraid of the sun. So for me, living in Texas, obviously I get a lot of sun. I don't, bake, but I do feel so much energy from the sun. I mean, I don't really have to struggle with the seasonal affected disorder anymore that I did up north. And let me tell you, I just feel like a new woman when I get to be out in the sun a little bit each day. But
yeah,
go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to say before, because we get into the actual dependent part. Anyone that wants to go down that, look at the work of Dr. Jack Kruse and how important sunlight is for the POMC gene and activating melanin and just everything that does for healing. So, I mean, if anyone can tell, it's summer here in Australia and I am very tanned, but, I make sure I get a minimum of an hour a day. And everything that you said, the whole theory, there's no such thing as a healthy tan, they're now starting to debunk that quite heavily. So I'll leave with vitamin D, but if you want to know more, Dr. Jack Kruse is the person. He should be a bit hard to listen to because he's got quite an authoritative energy, but the essence of what he's saying is brilliant, and how toxic blue light is, and the theory behind why blue light is used so much by Meta and Google, who bought the rights off the CIA around, and I won't get too conspiracy on you, but around blue light and how it works and how blue light turns off dopamine and blue light makes us compliant. So if you're spending all day in front of a computer, TV screen and things like that, your ability for high executive thought and not centralized medicine, centralized living is decreased, and sunlight actually helps to break that down. So yeah,
I'm delighted that you said that and gave us that information. I went through this more about the sun just for 1 second before we get onto this beautiful little puppy here. When I moved to Texas, again, I was living in the Northeast. I was in New York and Pennsylvania in America. And again, we have 4 seasons there, but there was always at least 4 months of, cold, dark, and, the sun is lower. And I always had the seasonal affected disorder because I love to be in connection with nature. And I'm not a snow sports bunny, so I loved a little bit of warmer weather. So when I first moved to Texas several years ago, I went through this phase. And again, it's like a very experiential, it's going to sound a little woo-woo, but it was like I really, truly, for the first time in my life, felt like I was developing a relationship with the sun. And it was like I'd go out, and if I couldn't be in it, I literally would miss it. It's like I could feel my cells craving that sunshine. And I remember I would joke around, with, my family, and I would like open my mouth and like, gotta get the sun in. Like, I just want to eat the sun. But literally I could feel something happening within me on a cellular level, just like, being under that sun. So, I totally, everything you're saying, I feel that to be true. I could literally feel it.
Well, that's interesting. They say that when you start to live a lifestyle outside of blue light and into sun, what should happen is your addiction should be to the sun. That's actually a very good sign that you're working properly. And for people with kidney disease that don't know, vitamin D, actual vitamin D, not the dependent one we're talking about here, I think is one of the key things that will go out very early on to set up a pathway through FGF23 and clotho and phosphorus. That's talk for another day. And lead to chronic kidney disease. But also there's some great research coming out about how water sits in your body in a crystalline way. And if you're not getting enough infrared and UVA, UVB, you don't move water in and out of the cells correctly, leading to chronic dehydration. And you need sunlight to do that. So yeah, there's definitely some scientific research. And I think we're going to see in the next couple of years, it's been talked about now. And again, Dr. Jack Cruz is heading that stuff up, but we'll start to realize how important sunlight is in this whole slip, slop, slap and putting chemicals on them and baking them into your skin. And not getting sunlight is actually accelerating things like cancer. And you don't want to burn your skin for sure. You don't want to put your skin under stress like that. But if you can do it properly and build up your melanin stores, which is something I've worked really hard to do, sun is everything that you just said. So, yeah.
And that's the thing I love about this conversation right here is, you have the knowledge and the wisdom, but the other facet of what I'm explaining and something the audience can do if they're not a naturopath is listen to your body. Literally is like, I experienced this, everything you're talking about. I experienced this, and your body does talk to you. And listen to it, really listen to it. How do I feel after sitting in front of the computer? Do I feel lethargic? Like truly start to have a relationship with your body and how you feel. And your body tends to guide you. I'm talking about addictions, but your body does truly tend to guide you to what helps you to thrive just very organically. So if people can start to listen to their body a little bit more, your body's guiding you to health, I believe, wants to guide you in that direction. So. Okay, so now the other vitamin D is love and support from someone dependent on us is really, really healthy. Dog, animal, child, anything, your garden, something that is dependent on you nurturing it, right? So again, not just us getting nurturing from other people, but us being that one that's nurturing others as well too. I don't have any animals right now, but I've always had dogs and cats, and I've been without one for a while because I've been moving around quite a bit, but it's in my radar to get another pet sometimes soon in the future, hopefully. So.
Oh, I love mine. I've got a great big Doberman, and I would bring him over, but he is literally fast asleep on the couch.
Oh, okay.
He's snoring, so I'll just leave him over there.
Yeah. Okay, so now we've got vitamin C, which is love and support and giving back to our communities. Again, hard to do depending on how you feel. But there is something very, very, it's almost sacred. It's like that we talk about like the feminine energy of like getting outside of yourself and making sure that those around you, seeing how they're doing, your neighbors. I mean, again, sadly, we live in this time where, so many of us are so disconnected and, we might not like our neighbors and we got a problem with everybody. It's like we're always looking to divide and conquer all over around us. And, the last year as well for myself is, especially after being quarantined and, tied up in the house is like really starting to get interested in the people who live right around me and how's everyone else doing? And can I help you? Do you need something? Or maybe you can help me if I need something, just literally being friendly, getting to know my neighbors, my communities, and seeing, again, opening my eyes outside of my own worldview and my own issues and really starting to be a part of other people in my community. And I'm, fortunately, there's a lot of cool people here. So it's wonderful.
Awesome. Now I'm very lucky with this. I'm on a block of 4 standalone like townhouses, but we're all owner occupiers and we get along like a house on fire. Like my smoke alarm didn't work the other day and I'm not going to get up on a wobbly chair with my leg, but I'm like, Brett, can you come over and fix my, he's like, of course. And then, we've all just bought some mulch together to make the garden that we share together. It's lovely. And I've gone from a place where I had some psychopathic neighbours in my previous property to where I am now. And I'm like, oh, it's so nice having beautiful neighbors where we can all meet in the driveway together and chat. And yeah, it is. It's such a different thing. And we are so disconnected in that in the Western world. You look at cultures like maybe Japan or when I was in Bhutan, they were like that, and Tibet, and they are still very community orientated. Everybody knows everybody. You know, the village raises the children. Through South America, they're like that as well. And we are in the West very disconnected from that. And it's having communities, you know, when I worked for Dr. Joe, that was my big community, you know, my Dr. Joe community. And they've played a really important role in my mental health and support. So I feel very blessed for my beautiful neighbours. But yeah, community, and now I've got the gym community, other bits and pieces, but community, yeah, it's underrated because I think in the West, we don't put a priority on this, and it is such a beautiful thing to have when you do get it. And I know for me, the Dr. Joe community was the first one that I really had. I'm like, wow, this has really been missing from my life because it's not something that we nurture in the West.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And again, it can be an online community, you know, it can be any sort of community that you fit in. But lately I've been really getting out and trying to find people locally here to connect with. But yeah, same, I feel the same. You know, when you really click in with a really supportive, loving community, you can see how nurturing it is for everybody, I think.
Yeah.
All right. So we got two more. So this is vitamin W, which is kind of going on a bigger level, which is kind of recognizing our meaning and purpose and starting to give back on a broader level, give back to the world, like a larger vision. Again, if you're in the throes of chronic illness, a lot of your job is to work on the self and take care of yourself. But, you know, there's a lot of people who do come through or end up trying to give back to other people like them. I know a lot of people in the kidney community, including myself, like to give back to my community, you know, that I feel so deeply connected to and a part of. And it does make you feel like what you're going through has a larger meaning. And that's one of my main messages I like to spread in the world of chronic illness and kidney disease and the transplant community is, we talk about getting the organ and you know, and helping cure these diseases or get through these diseases, but we don't really talk about the meaning that we receive from going through the experience. So the whole meaning and purpose thing of a chronic illness, I think is very widely missing within the community. And I think if we start to look at it as not just something that's wrong with you, but something that's trying to forge deeper meaning and purpose within you simultaneously, I think that just changes the whole game in terms of, you know, illness and recovery and, you know, even death, even, you know, the other end of the spectrum. If we just stop trying to kill everything that we go through as so far as an illness, which I know is part of it, but if we start to simultaneously look at the meaning and, you know, what is this birthing within me that I didn't see without this? I think it would just change the game. We could have a more loving relationship with the whole process.
You know, we can have these conversations and they're lived conversations. We're not talking about it intellectually. It's like, well, we're in the middle of this. We've gone through that. And I know, you know, when I work with patients, you know, it's funny because I've got MS and I used to see a lot of MS patients and I don't so much anymore. I do far more kidney and biohacking longevity stuff. But I'd be like, would anyone want to see me? I feel like a failed naturopath because I've got an autoimmune disease. And people are like, no, we want to see you because you are a living, breathing example, someone who's still functioning at a high level, you know, traveling all the time. You've got this you're doing all these things that people with disease are told they shouldn't be able to do. And so that's why we want to work with you. And I was like, oh, okay. I don't see any of that. You know, I was still in the story of I grew up eating all organic and have had a great lifestyle and still ended up with an autoimmune disease. Like what but it is that there is a different thing that you bring when you would be working with patients going through this that isn't what a hospital or a general provider can give because it's not lived. And so when you live it, you have, you know, it's like I always say with specialists, I'm like, okay, that's great that a specialist gives me some information, but I'm like, you are giving me intellectual information. You've not lived it. You have no freaking idea. Like, I don't go to those people for anything but an academic understanding, and then I'll run that through because I've obviously got a high academic understanding. I'll run that against mine, and then for the live stuff, I don't even listen to them because I'm like, how could I take any information of someone that's never been through this? And what the gift that you give to people is, you know, it's priceless because it's lived. And so of course people will grow up to that. So yeah.
I think I think that's going to be, I think, in the future, and it's overlooked right now really drastically, is not just the lived experience, but who has really fought the entropy and really developed even further post a situation. I think, like, what are they doing? Right.
Yeah.
I've said this to many doctors. They'd say, like, what are you doing? Like, you almost died, and like you're doing so incredible. You're working, you're doing this, you're doing this, you're doing this. And I would try to tell them, but it was like the interest wasn't really quite there. And even during the whole pandemic over the last couple of years, I've been very fortunate to not get sick. And I'm like, why are we not studying people who aren't getting sick, who have low immunity? Like, I just feel like the research and the studying is, maybe we're leaving out a really pivotal, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, I don't know.
Pivotal piece or a component. Yeah, I agree.
Right. Like a part of this involves these people. Like, how are these people thriving? Don't you want to know what they're doing? But sometimes they don't. But I'll tell you who does want to know are the patients.
100%. They're like, well, how do we go through a near-death experience, something like a chronic disease, have a kidney transplant, and then thrive off the back of it? But because that's not the Western medical model. The Western medical model is to just get you through and not die and then go back to your life. I think more and more people want to know how to thrive and live, again, all the stuff that we've just spoken about there. And people want to know how people come out the other end and then thrive off the back end of it. And we don't have enough examples of that being put forward through the medical stuff, because it gives, one of the things with my business partner and I, when we built Kidney Coach, was we built it on the back of educating and empowering people so they could self-advocate, which is, one of the reasons we brought you on board, because you're such a big piece of that puzzle. And number two is to give people hope, because when you've got hope, you can think bigger. If you don't have any hope, it's very hard to think in a grander way of how this could be and end up somewhere really cool. You and I were talking right before we hit record about, I was just in Dubai having stem cells injected into my spine, and the guys that did it to me said, you know what, we've actually got a cure for, I've got a spinal cord injury. They're like, they said, we've got a cure for your very specific type of spinal cord injury that will be ready in 12 months. I'm like, oh my goodness, like in 12 months, would my walking go back to normal and will I be out of chronic pain? And they're like, I can't see why not. And I'm like, wow, and so that whole having hope and having, to aspire to something different and to get the most out of your journey, I think is something that isn't included in the Western medical model. And I think if it was, we would see far greater patient outcomes.
Listening to what you just said really hit me in the heart, because through the research and experiences I've had over the last 5 years working in different institutions and with different patients, I have to just be quite frank with you, is that I've come to the very stark realization that the Western medical model is contributing to disempowerment and keeping patients small. It's very clear. It's very clear. And I understand that with certain patients, the prognosis is difficult and they may not have a full turnaround. But I think that I have met personally hundreds and hundreds of patients who go through the process of transplantation and then are still left in survival and fear. And if you are still in survival and fear, you can never break through to success in other levels. And they purposefully, again, out of the protection, the proxy parent, and they keep the patient in fear. Oh, don't do that. You can't do that. You can't go to Harvard. You can't. One of the reasons I am so successful is because I've gone against, with intelligence, a lot of the fear-based mentality that was being propagated to me. Like I felt like I was a ninja. I'd go in and I'm like, okay, not that, not that, not that, not that. And I was intelligent enough to understand how to be cautious with my own life. I wasn't a child. I didn't want to be spoken to like a child. I understood. And when I had questions, I would reach out and ask. I wouldn't always get an answer back. Or sometimes I would be told that I had too many questions, or they would just listen to me. This is the way you do it. I got rid of those providers. But what I've come to realize is that I have one or two providers, which for me, Western healthcare model, there are just countless individuals who are terrified and completely distrustful of anyone in the system now. I have a good friend of mine here in Houston who's a well-known doctor who got herself in quite a bit of trouble surrounding the pandemic for some things that she was doing. And every day she's like, I can tell you, I see multiple patients every day who say, I don't know who to see. I don't trust any doctors. What do I do? So we have a major issue with trust, rightfully so, because there's been a tyrannical dominating energy, and now people have woken up and they don't know what to do. But what people have done, what this has done, is really, in my opinion, not everybody, but amplified individuals' level of understanding around their self-responsibility and their health, which should have been there all along. But I see so many patients now saying, I am taking radical responsibility of my physical, mental, and emotional well-being today because I don't know who I can trust. So let me do all I can. And this is how it should be. But now I think the providers, there's some tension there. When patients take that degree of sovereignty back, it goes against the, well, come to your GP every 3 months and get this test done and this test done and this. And we're starting to learn all these things, and it's a difficult time within the model, but I'm hopeful that it's going to balance itself out after we get through some of this mess and tension. And just like we talked to in the beginning of this presentation around those that aren't really meant to be and want to control or don't understand, they'll fall to the wayside. And the patients and provider relationships that are meant to be empowering, more like a physician coach and somebody who's willing to meet you as an equal, not with imposter syndrome or a proxy parent or dictate to you what you need to do. The funny thing about me is there's been a couple of providers who have, maybe called me complicated, but the proof is in the pudding. Is like, I'm doing great. My labs are great. I'm one of your healthiest patients. So how can you say that I'm a bad patient?
I know, it's so funny when you go against their belief around that sort of stuff, and it's the good practitioners will ask the questions of, okay, what is it that I don't know? And let me ask this patient. And then the others will just be like an anomaly or whatever. I'm thinking of Liddy Lawson. She did a testimonial for us. So Liddy had cancer, went into kidney failure and was on dialysis for a very long time. And then they told her she'll never come off dialysis. Her labs were really low. And she was very lucky. She had a nephrologist that kept saying, we'll be able to get you off, we'll be able to get you off, we'll be able to get you off. And they'd take her off and then they'd put her back on. And then the last sort of thing he said to her is, I gave you false hope. I'm so sorry, you'll never come off. And she went and saw someone else. And then he said, let's give you one more go. And she was doing all the kidney coach stuff. And so her labs have started to improve and improve. She's doing the dietary stuff. And they're like, okay, hang on, there's something happening here. And if it wasn't for this nephrologist that went, hang on a minute, he was very anti what she was doing in a sense, but he was also like, well, she's improving. And he wanted to get her off. So because he had that belief, and she's now off dialysis, and she was booked in to have the fistula put in, and they were like, you don't need it. And it's amazing. She was told she would never go off, but it was a combination of she self-advocated and self-learned and self-empowered. And she had a provider that was open enough to go, okay, there's something I obviously don't know. This person's improving and doing the opposite of what I suspect. And she's our age, in her mid-40s. I want to be able to give her the freedom of never being on dialysis because I don't need to be right. I don't need to be about this, and I want to empower her. And that's a very amazing individual that says, even though this person is outside my belief of what is possible and going through the therapeutic model of how I want them to do, I'm going to support them in what they want to do to come off dialysis. And she's been off now, I think, for 6-9 months, maybe even a year. And so I'm like, that is the kind of healthcare provider that you want to have advocating for you. And unfortunately, the ego model, if someone falls outside of that and outside of their belief of what they deem is possible, they can't see it because their brain's not wired that way. And it's, even me, my first neurologist was like, we will be in a wheelchair in 5 years. In 5 years, I was trekking into Mount Everest. And I was just like, I fired him because I'm like, why would I let someone with a heavy belief like that dictate the course of my disease. I'm not, why would I? That's not the envisionment I have for my life. So I think we have to be very discerning around the words that we allow spoken to us because of the nocebo placebo effect. And, the nocebo effect is just as powerful as the placebo, and who we have in our corner. And I think we've done a podcast about this, is finding healthcare providers that will advocate for us and be on our side and are able to think critically and realize there are some things that they do not know. And I think that's really important.
Yeah, I think that's hopefully we'll be going into an era of some changes, I hope, because the reality is this: the denial of some of these wonderful, not even miraculous, but things that are possible are going to happen more and more. And the other thing is, even if you're really resistant, if you're a provider and you're really indoctrinated and you have a hard time and you want to be very protective, I still think that for the majority of the time, they're trying to do the right thing. It's just they become limited in their capability for many reasons. But what can't be stopped is the amount of awakening patients. So at some point, people are just going to flat out say, you're fired because I don't like this relationship. So if you don't want to change and you want to stay rigid to that construct, is that you're going to continue to evolve with these proxy parent disempowered patient relationships. That's going to be your primary clientele. But there are more and more patients waking up to the possibilities and want a healthy patient provider empowering relationship. Again, we're not talking ridiculousness, like some people can't get off that, whatever, depending on the situation or the age or whatever. But I have a feeling that there's a heck of a lot more than we realize that can recover. And, I even question for myself, if things were done differently back then, I might be in a different situation. I'm not, and I'm grateful for where I am and I make the best of it. But again, things are changing, and we all have to do our part to get on board. If not, you're gonna die with the old model, and that will thrive until it can't thrive anymore or even survive anymore. But thankfully, we're all changing, and all of this we've been through, I think, has really been the catalyst to help us awaken. So again, another little silver lining about all of the last couple of years. So thank you so much, Fiona.
No, thank you. That was a good, robust conversation. Hopefully everyone got a lot out of that. So if you want to know more about what Stephanie does and if you want to work with her, I'll put in some links below to her own personal website. And also if you've got kidney disease and you want to coach, you might be doing some of our programs and want to coach through her through our stuff, I'll put that in below as well. If you want to know more about what we do, head to www.kidneycoach.com. You'll also find us on Facebook and Instagram under the same handles. Make sure you hit subscribe and like. That way you will get notified anytime we put up more content. And if there's anything that you want Stephanie and I to talk about in our bullish, passionate way, please put it in the comments below. We'll add it to our list for 2025. We will be, Stephanie and I will be back in 2025. This is the last podcast we'll do for this year together. So Stephanie, thank you for being part of our team. We feel very blessed to have you. I think you're such a great asset to Kidney Coach and just all the, like I say, you're a walking example of what's possible. So thank you for being you and shining a light and for giving other people hope by modeling your fabulous, beautiful, wonderful self.
Thank you. And you too. And I'm delighted to be here.
Yeah, great. All right, everybody. Thank you for being part of our community, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Bye.